Good evening. Welcome to Loveworld USA News. I'm Barbara Sam. First, a quick look at the top stories this evening. Pope Francis dies at 88. Trump orders flag at half-staff in tribute. U.S. and Iran reports progress in nuclear talks. Planned follow-up meeting in Oman. White House blasts Pentagon leak reports as ego-soothing smears. Defense Secretary headset. China warns countries against cutting U.S. trade deals that undermine Beijing. President Trump to meet with Walmart, Target, and Home Depot executives over tariff concerns. And now to the news. Pope Francis, head of the Catholic Church, died Monday morning at the Vatican at the age of 88. The official cause of death of the Pope is he had a stroke earlier this morning, went into a coma, had a heart attack, and later died. The news was confirmed by Cardinal Kevin Farrell, the Carmelago of the Holy See, just one day after the Pontiff's final public appearance on Easter Sunday in St. Petersburg Square. Vice President J.D. Vance had visited the Pope on Easter morning in a quiet moment of greeting and prayer, just hours before the Pope passed. The meeting, briefly but symbolically powerful, came after months of both collaboration and disagreement between the Vatican and the Trump administration over immigration and global peace efforts. Following the announcement of the Pope's death, President Donald Trump ordered that all American flags be flown at half-staff across the nation. Speaking from the White House Easter egg roll event, President Trump praised Pope Francis as a good man who worked hard and loved the world. Pope Francis, born George Mario Bergoglio in Buenos Aires, Argentina, was elected Pope in 2013 following the resignation of Pope Benedict. He became the first Pope from the Americas and the first Jesuit Pope whose papacy was marked by criticism from both traditionalist and progressive fractions within the Church. As the world mourns the passing of a spiritual leader whose influence transcended borders and faiths, preparations are underway at the Vatican for an elaborate funeral and the intonation of a conclave to select his successor. Let's take a look.
I just signed an executive order putting the flags of our country, all of them, all federal flags and state flags, at half-mast in honor of Pope Francis. So he was a good man, worked hard, he loved the world, and it's an honor to do that.
The United States and Iran have announced progress in their ongoing negotiations over Tehran's nuclear program, with both sides agreeing to meet again in Oman on April 26. Saturday's talk in Rome marked a significant step in the rare face-to-face diplomacy between the two countries, with President Donald Trump's special envoy Steve Witkoff and Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi reportedly engaging directly during the session. The breakout came as both sides acknowledged good progress and what were described as both direct and indirect talks. Technical discussions are now expected in the coming days, indicating momentum towards a potential agreement. While U.S. officials remain tight-lipped about specifics, Araghchi stated that optimism may be warranted, but only with a great deal of caution, emphasizing Iran's guarded approach as further details are hammered out. These talks take place against the backdrop of heightened tensions in the Middle East, especially amid the Israel-Hamas conflict in Gaza and recent U.S. airstrikes on Iran-backed Houthi rebels in Yemen. The potential deal is being shaped with the involvement of multiple global players, including Oman. Meanwhile, Russia, a party to the original 2015 Iran nuclear deal, could play a vital role by potentially taking custody of Iran's enriched uranium if an agreement is reached. Ahead of the Rome meeting, Araghchi met with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Moscow, while Witkoff held consultations in Paris with Israeli officials. The talk comes as Iran seeks economic relief amid a worsening domestic situation. The rial has plunged against the U.S. dollar, protests continue over social policies, and sanctions continue to bite. Iran hopes a deal could stabilize the economy, though the U.S. remains firm that any enrichment above agreed limits is unacceptable. Watch this.
Iran has reported of the meeting with the U.S. officials where the Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi has said that both nations have managed to reach a better understanding on a series of principles and goals. He also said that the third round of talks, which will be aimed to discuss the technicalities, will be held in Oman. The next round of talks are expected to start on Wednesday this time round.
لذا ما از چهارشنبه این هفته فکر میکنم.
Technical discussions at the expert level will begin in Oman on Wednesday of this week. The experts will have more time to go into the details to design a framework for an agreement, and then we will meet again in Oman next Saturday to review the results of the experts' work to see how close we are to reaching an agreement.
The White House on Monday slammed reports implicating Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth in a signal chat involving military strike discussions, calling them non-stories fueled by shattered egos and disgruntled ex-staffers. The comments come in response to renowned scrutiny over leaks tied to Hegseth and other top Pentagon officials amid a broader investigation into unauthorized disclosures of sensitive national security information. The latest allegations published by the New York Times suggest Hegseth engaged in a second Signal group chat with his wife, attorney, and brother to discuss upcoming U.S. strikes on Houthi rebels targeting in Yemen. The revelation follows earlier reporting by The Atlantic that Hegseth and other national security officials had inadvertently added a journalist to a Signal thread that allegedly contained discussions about the strikes. When asked about his defense secretary, President Donald Trump quickly dismissed the fur, reaffirming his support for Hegseth, who had also downplayed the reports, blaming the leaks on disgruntled employees and hoaxers. He reiterated that no classified information had been mishandled and that he continues to work closely with President Trump. The fallout from the leaks has triggered a wave of high-level dismissals within the Department of Defense. 3 top aides were fired on Friday, alongside Deputy Secretary Stephen Finberg, Chief of Staff Joe Casper, a 5th aide press official John Yolit, who later penned a blistering op-ed in Politico, claiming the Pentagon was in total chaos and predicting Hegseth's immediate departure, had resigned earlier, reportedly over structural changes to the communications team. Let's take a look.
Hoaxers. This group, this group right here, full of hoaxers.
U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth lashed out at reporters outside the White House on Monday after reports he shared highly sensitive security details in a second Signal chat. He reportedly shared details of a March attack on Yemen's Houthis in a message group that included his wife, brother, and personal lawyer.
See, this is what the media does. They take anonymous sources from disgruntled former employees, and then they try to slash and burn people and ruin their reputations. Not going to work with me.
The renewed scrutiny comes at an uncertain moment for Hegseth and the Pentagon, where senior officials were ousted last week as part of an internal leak investigation. But President Donald Trump told reporters that he continues to stand behind his defense secretary.
Pete's doing a great job. Everybody's happy with him. We have the highest recruitment numbers I think they've had in 28 years. No, he's doing a great job.
The news will be back after this break.
This is one of the most important days, in my opinion, American history. It's our declaration of economic independence. My fellow Americans, this is Liberation Day. April 2nd, 2025 will forever be remembered as the day American industry was reborn, the day America's destiny was reclaimed, and the day that we began to make America wealthy again. American steelworkers, auto workers, farmers, and skilled craftsmen watched in anguish as foreign leaders have stolen our jobs, foreign cheaters have ransacked our factories, and foreign scavengers have torn apart our once beautiful American dream. Our country and its taxpayers have been ripped off for more than 50 years, but it is not going to happen anymore. We are finally putting America first. In a few moments, I will sign a historic executive order instituting reciprocal tariffs on countries throughout the world. We will supercharge our domestic industrial base. We will pry open foreign markets and break down foreign trade barriers. More production at home will mean stronger competition and lower prices. From this day on, we're not going to let anyone tell us that American workers and families cannot have the future that they deserve. We're going to produce the cars and ships, chips, airplanes, minerals, and medicines that we need right here in America. We're going to build our future with American hands, with American heart. This will be indeed the golden age of America.
Welcome back. China has issued a strong warning to countries negotiating trade agreements with the U.S., cautioning them not to enter into deals that harm Chinese interests as global tensions escalate over President Donald Trump's sweeping tariff regime. In a sharply worded statement, China's Ministry of Commerce declared that it would resolutely take countermeasures if any country reaches a trade agreement with the U.S. that it considers detrimental to Beijing. The ministry added that China would never accept being targeted or being sidelined in global trade realignments. The warning comes as countries such as Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan continue discussions with Washington after President Trump's April 2nd announcement of sweeping new tariffs against nearly all U.S. trade partners. Despite these developments, China signaled it remains open to dialogue, though no formal negotiations with the U.S. have been announced. This standoff has fueled concerns among global exporters, stalled major shipments, and raised alarms over the long-term impact on the global economy. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bassett recently encouraged American allies in Asia to approach China as a group, suggesting a coordinated front in future trade talks. Beijing, however, views such coalitions with suspicion, calling them a form of economic bullying. As nations weigh their next moves, the ongoing trade war between the world's two largest economies threatens to reshape the global trade order. And China is making it clear it would not quietly accept a diminished role. Let's take a look.
China is warning countries not to side with the United States in seeking relief from President Trump's sweeping tariff hikes, threatening retaliation against those who strike trade deals at Beijing's expense. In a strongly worded statement Monday, China's Ministry of Commerce vowed to take reciprocal countermeasures if any nation tries to win exemptions from Trump's tariffs by cutting back trade with China. China firmly opposes any party reaching a deal at the expense of China's interests, the ministry said, adding that the country is determined and capable of safeguarding its own rights and interests. The warning came in response to reports that the Trump administration is using pressure tactics, offering reduced tariffs to countries that distance themselves from Chinese trade. Appeasement cannot bring peace, and compromise cannot win respect, the ministry added. Sacrificing the interests of others in exchange for so-called exemptions is like seeking the skin from a tiger. It will only fail on both ends. This latest exchange escalates the ongoing trade war between the world's two largest economies. Trump recently raised tariffs on Chinese imports to 145%, triggering Beijing to retaliate with 125% duties on U.S. goods. The Chinese government blasted the U.S. for what it called abuse of tariffs under the guise of fair trade, accusing Washington of coercing other nations into reciprocal tariff talks under unfair terms.
President Donald Trump is slated to host executives from some of America's largest retail chains Monday afternoon for a closed-door meeting at the White House focused on his administration's sweeping tariff policy. Representatives from Walmart, Target, Home Depot, and Lowe's are expected to attend, according to a senior White House official. The meeting was not listed on the president's public schedule and comes amid growing concerns from the retail industry over the cost of unpredictable of Trump's trade agenda. The Trump administration tariffs, including those aimed at China, Europe, and a range of global suppliers, have created uncertainty for businesses with import-heavy supply chains. For major retailers, the duties threaten to squeeze already thin margins and raise prices for consumers still grappling with long shadows of inflation. The retail leaders are expected to share their concerns and advocate for exemptions or adjustments that could soften the impact on essential goods. Retailers will be affected differently depending on their sourcing strategies. Walmart, for example, has said that about 2/3 of its merchandise sold in the U.S. is produced domestically, with the rest primarily sourced from China and Mexico. In contrast, Target relies more heavily on imported discretionary items like apparel and home decor, leaving it more vulnerable to rising costs from tariffs. The company recently reported sluggish revenue growth and modest expectations for 2025. As the White House pursues a tariff-heavy approach to international trade, critics from both the business sector and within Trump's own party warns of mounting economic risk. The outcome of today's meeting could shape future modifications to the tariff regime or signal which industries the administration may prioritize for relief as political and economic pressures mount. DHL has announced a suspicion of international shipments to U.S. consumers valued at $800, citing consumer or custom delays triggered by President Donald Trump's new tariff policy. The global delivery giant said the move was in response to a significant increase in paperwork and inspection requirements following the administration's latest overhaul of import rules, which later came into effect earlier this month. The suspension, which applies to packages shipped from all countries to individual American consumers, will begin immediately and remain in place until further notice. Business-to-business deliveries will continue, though DHL warned those could have also be delayed due to the same customs backlog. The previous threshold for streamlined customs processing was $2,500, but it has now been lowered to $800, placing more pressure on logistic firms to process formal customs entries. The situation is expected to intensify on May 2nd when the White House closes the de minimis loophole, a rule that currently allows low-value imports, particularly from China and Hong Kong, to enter the U.S. duty-free. Fast fashion retailers such as Shein and Temu have already warned that prices may rise as a result of the tariff changes and tightened trade rules. The Trump administration argues the crackdown is necessary to curb deceptive shipping practices and combat the flow of illicit drugs, particularly synthetic opioids like fentanyl. In contrast, Beijing has condemned the measures as politically motivated, with Hong Kong Post announcing it would also suspend U.S.-bound parcels by sea, and from April 27 stop accepting American-bound mail altogether. Watch this.
DHL announced it will no longer ship packages valued over $800 to the U.S. A new rule, effective April 5th, lowered the threshold for declarations of imports. Before, packages worth less than $2,500 did not need to be declared, but now that applies to all packages worth more than $800. The DHL wrote, quote, "This exchange has caused a surge in formal customs clearances, which we are handling around the clock," end quote. It's unknown how long the suspension will last. The suspension does not apply to business-to-business shipments. The move comes as global trade has been shaken by Trump administration policy. The governments of Taiwan, Japan, and South Korea have begun trade negotiations with the Trump administration after the president enforced tariffs against most of America's trading partners. China said it would take countermeasures against countries that take trade deals with the United States it deems to be detrimental to its interests. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent expressed pessimism over negotiations with China.
Maria, I think it's unfortunate that the Chinese actually don't want to come and negotiate because they are the worst offenders in the international trading system.
The news continues after this break. Stay with us.
The countdown to the Lord's soon return has begun, and in this first quarter of the year of completeness, Loveworld USA has indeed been spreading and preaching the gospel of our Lord Jesus, preparing the hearts of billions around the world to expect the Lord.
Year, we will complete the full preaching of the gospel in all nations.
Loveworld USA broadcasted life-changing programs with our man of God. Global Communion Service, Your Loveworld Specials, Global Day of Prayer, Healing Streams. Loveworld News, where we emphasize truth and deception. Truth Watch USA, where Americans are exposed to the truth. Topics such as the failed agenda of so-called globalists, what's really happening to your food, President Trump, a sign to the church. Prayer programs where effective prayers were offered. Tremendous Power, Pray for America. Faith-filled programs like I'm Just Saying, Pastor Chris Worth reading, Stick to the Word, programs with Pastor Benny, and many more. We say thank you, dearest partners, for contributing towards our programming and daily operations through your partnership. Loveworld USA is positioned for a massive harvest of souls all around the world as we set our sail to reach more people in this second quarter, in more languages, and change more lives. This is a call to our dearest partners all over the world to join this mandate in completing the full preaching of the gospel to all nations as you sponsor our 2025 projects. 1. Pastor Chris in 1 Billion Homes Project. Ensure the spread of the message of the man of God through Loveworld USA. The spread of our ministry programs and agenda through satellite, cable, internet, digital, mobile apps, Alpha TV, OTT platforms, our news, and our current affairs. 2. Minutes to Reach Billions 4.0. Make your every minute count for the gospel as we spread the awareness of Loveworld USA to your world. 3. Translation of our language-specific channels. Make it possible for billions around the world to watch our programs in their native language. 4. Tag your name to a program. Sponsor and tag your name to our various Loveworld USA programs. You can adopt a specific program. 5. Studio upgrade. Join us today with your lavish gift to the work of Loveworld USA. Every SPs or dollar you give goes to accomplishing our mandate to fully preach the gospel with our life-transforming content. For more information, please call the number showing on your screen. God bless you.
Welcome back. Romania is preparing for a high-stakes presidential election redo on May 4th, following the annulment of last year's vote that plunged the country into its worst political crisis since the 1989 fall of communism. The Constitutional Court invalidated the December election after far-right candidate Colin Georgescu unexpectedly led the first round amid allegations of electoral violations and suspected Russian interference. Georgescu, now under investigation, has been barred from participating in the new race. His exclusion and the subsequent political fallout have fueled widespread political mistrust in state institutions and the electoral process. The political landscape remains fragmented. Elena Lascuni, who placed second in last year's race and is running again, has faced fresh setbacks after her own party, the Save Romanian Union, known as the USR, withdrew support in favor of Bucharest Mayor Nucas Dan. Foreign influence, particularly through social media, has added to the concerns. Romanian intelligence linked George Cuca's previous rise to coordinated campaigns on platforms like TikTok, prompting the EU investigation into potential violations of the Digital Service Act. Although TikTok claims to have removed tens of thousands of fake accounts and bolstered election protection, the Central Election Bureau has drawn criticism for requesting online takedown, sparking fears of censorship. With public confidence still shaken, the upcoming vote is seen not just as a presidential contest, but as a broader referendum on Romania's democratic reliance. El Salvador's President Nayib Bukele has proposed a controversial prisoner exchange with Venezuela, offering to repatriate 252 Venezuelan nationals recently deported from the U.S. and held in El Salvador's high-security terrorism confinement center. In return, Bukele is demanding that Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro release the same number of political prisoners held in his country. Bukele made the offer public on social media, framing it as a humanitarian agreement and highlighting the contrast between the violent crimes allegedly committed by the deportees and the political nature of the prisoners' detention in Venezuela. The proposal sparked an immediate backlash from Caracas. Venezuela's Chief Prosecutor Tariq William Saab criticized the plan, demanding clarity on the charges against the deportees and questioning their access to legal representation. The Venezuelan government continues to deny the existence of political prisoners, a claim disputed by international human rights groups. Bukele's proposal also included mention of nearly 50 other foreign nationals, including U.S. citizens, suggesting a broader scope for potential negotiations. The deportees at the center of the proposed swap were sent to El Salvador by the United States under President Donald Trump's revived use of the Alien Enemies Act of 1798, which permits the detainees and removal of citizens from nationals or from nations deemed adversarial. Many of those deported are accused of being afflicted or affiliated with the Venezuelan criminal organization Tren de Agra. Venezuela has denounced the deportation as a mass kidnapping and a violation of human rights. The U.S. Supreme Court recently ordered a temporary halt to additional removals under the law, citing due process concerns. Despite the court's intervention, the White House continues to defend the policy, dismissing the legal challenges as politically motivated. Let's take a look.
In a post on X, we know that he offered to exchange 252 Venezuelans currently detained in El Salvador's mega prison for political prisoners he says Venezuela holds. Those prisoners are people El Salvador has claimed, that the U.S. has claimed rather, they're members of the gangs and are currently locked up in prison.
Just before we end the news, a quick look at tomorrow's weather forecast. And to end the news today, a quick recap of the headlines. Pope Francis dies at 88. Trump orders flags at half-staff in tribute. U.S. and Iran report progress in nuclear talks. Planned follow-up meeting in Oman. White House blasts Pentagon leak reports as ego-soothing smears Defense Secretary Hegseth. China warns countries against cutting U.S. trade deals that undermine Beijing. President Trump to meet with Walmart, Target, and Home Depot executives over tariff concerns. And that's the news for today. Join us at the same time tomorrow for more news. I'm Barbara Sam. Good night, and God bless you.